So I can discuss about the virtual machines, and I can show you an example of how the resources which I have created right now, how I can reuse or connect that to my virtual machine. Okay. So once we are looking at virtual machines over here, as part of virtual machine, what is the significance of virtual machines over here, and what are the options given by Microsoft in context of virtual machines. Now, if I go back to the foundations of cloud, there are three important members over here. One is storage, compute, and networking. Correct? So networking we already have discussed in context of virtual networks, subnets, virtual network peering, communications across on-premises environment to Azure environment. So networking we have discussed. Storage we have not discussed as yet, neither have we discussed compute. So as far as compute is concerned, compute gives you the required computational power or the processing power that we require. Now that processing power you can get by using virtual machines. Right? Now these virtual machines is very similar to your on-premises network, on-premises virtualization option that we have, and many of you all may have done that using hypervisor or by using the Hyper-V of Windows environment or Citrix or VirtualBox or VMware, vCloud, right? System Center. There are a number of options within your on-premises environment which will help you do that. Something similar you can do it on Azure as well. Azure itself is a completely virtualized environment based on System Center, right? And on top of that, we can create our virtual machines. So the physical environment is given by Microsoft. Virtual environment we can create over here. As part of this module, we are going to look at creation of Linux VMs, Windows virtual machines, right? Selecting a specific VM size, configuring high availability. Remember I mentioned about availability zones earlier. We will discuss about that and other options for high availability. Then we'll discuss about dedicated host, right? We'll look at configuration of auto scale options using scale sets and security of resources using Key Vault and Azure disk encryption, right? So below 4 points we'll do it tomorrow. First 2 points I want to discuss today and answer any questions and queries in that area. So if you look at your virtual machines, if you see the first point over here, the first point is start with network. And in my case, what I have done is I have already created the resources, networking resources, which were needed for this virtual machine. Now, why is this network required? Because I cannot create a machine without a private IP address. And where do I get this private IP address from? Where do we get this private IP address from?
VNets.
Anyone? That's right.
Subnet.
VNet and subnet.
VNet
Yes.
subnet.
So using that VNet and subnet, we will get our IP address. Right. Second is what is the name of the machine that you want to mention? Depending upon what is the workload that you have deployed on it, it is meant for a specific environment, right? So that based on that information, you can specify your VM name. Now, small problem over here, guys, which I need you all to be careful about. Once these VMs are created, 5, 10, 15, as many number of VMs you create, you cannot differentiate the VMs just by seeing the VM information or VM details, right? Whether this VM it has a Linux environment or Windows environment, that part you will come to know. But beyond that, you will not know what are additional deployments or resources on that machine. So all that information has to be part of the tags that you are creating, the resource tags, and your name of the machine. That will help you quickly identify what is there inside this machine. Otherwise, yes,
Yeah.
resource tags, correct. Otherwise, every time you have to go log in into the machine and then see the information, right? Third aspect here you see is what should be the location of the VM. Like I said earlier, based on the location, the cost will differ, right? What is the kind of processing that you need, computational power that you need, that is size of the machine, that will determine the size of the machine. What is the pricing model that you want to go for? I will come to this part a bit detail in tomorrow's session, where we'll talk about reserved instances. That will help you determine the pricing model. From storage perspective, here you have options for SSD and HDD. So whether you want standard SSD, whether you want to have premium SSD, that depends upon your application need. And very important one is selecting your operating system depending upon what kind of workload you have. Now, when you're choosing a virtual machine, now what would be the scenarios for virtual machines? Whenever you have a custom workload or custom requirements which are not getting satisfied, or these you're not able to solve these issues or concerns by using pre-existing PaaS services given by Microsoft, then I would recommend you all to go for a virtual machine, because the kind of management tasks that is required for a virtual machine is much more, right? So unless you have a good admin team which will manage it for you, I would recommend go for a PaaS service. You'll get a higher SLA for it. You'll get uh, good management of resources given by Microsoft, and you also have number of options over here which are available out of the box. Okay, so we'll come to PaaS services in detail in upcoming sessions. For the current session, let's look at Azure Virtual Machine. This part I don't want to discuss. I have already taken this part separately. Segregate the network, create one or more subnets. We are done with that. Create and assign network security group. I am done with this as well. Plan each VM deployment. We have discussed the steps earlier. From perspective of naming of the VMs, what is the environment that you would want? I'm not sure about the second point. I don't see this makes sense, because this information is available with your VM. So this you can ignore. Third point is the instance. Now definitely this is which is very, very important. So whenever you have a resource and you want high availability for that resource, you would need to create multiple instances of it. So web instance 1, web instance 2, web instance 3, you might want to create number of instances for that, right? So in those scenarios, this is which is very, very important, and I have been using this in almost all my projects. Fourth one, which I would 100% recommend, that is product or a service. So what are you running on that machine? You're running a web environment, you're running a FTP server, you're running an SMTP environment. All that information or the service details you should have as part of your VM name. Okay. Along with that, what is the role that you are running? If you're enabling IS server on top of it, right? Make provision for that. And these things you can add as part of the name. So first thing is the environment name, the instance name, product or service that you are running on that machine. These three information you should have on the VM name itself. So that this will help you to quickly search for it. This will help you quickly identify that resource. Guys, I'm aware about there are a lot of other information that is needed. Put that information as part of your tags, resource tags, right? That will be a better solution over here. Right? Your VM deployment would have number of dependencies, your storage account, for diagnostic information, manage disks, right? Your network resource that we are creating, network interface card, network security group, and you may or may not use a public IP address. It's up to you whether it is a internet facing, client facing, or internet facing resource, or it is internal facing. If it is internal facing, you'll need only public IP address. Okay. If it is internal facing, you'll need only private IP address. Let me stop here. I already have number of resources here. Let me create a virtual machine. Let me use the same resource group, or let me change the resource group in this context. Let me give it a name as Subhash Server RG. Right. The purpose why I'm doing this is I want to showcase that even if there are resources across resource group, still it works. Whatever name I want to give, web VM 01, region. Let me take region as East US or East Asia. I'm doing this mistake on purpose so that we can understand and see what happens if I do this. Let me take a Windows machine, Windows Server 2019 data center, right? You can specify whatever other images that you'd want. So there are large number of pre-built images, pre-existing images here. You can pick from your marketplace. Depending upon how much of CPU, how much of RAM do you want, you can specify those details over here. So you have A series machines, B series machines, right? Now each of these machines are specific to the kind of resource that one would want to create. Let me go for DS2V2.
You being architect, there's
Yes,
loads and loads of like servers, built-in servers available. How do
yes.
you suggest to your client what kind of server? Like most of them are like disk space and RAMs are pretty much same. They look pretty same. Like how do you suggest like how they
Super.
do you take do you have questionnaire asking so
Yeah.
what kind of a latency or acceptance and how much their budget, what kind of a questionnaire you ask your clients?
Okay, that's a superb question. So once it comes to virtual machines, many of these things come out of the pre-existing environment that they have in their on-premises environment, right? So what we do is we first look at the workloads that they have, look at the machines that they have created locally, machines in sense virtual machines, right? So each of these machines where they have SQL Server, what is the configuration for it? If they have a web application, what is the configuration of a single machine and how many such instances they are creating, right? If they have file server or any other kind of workload, what is the current configuration of those VMs that they have, right? That's the first parameter. Second parameter over here will be, even if they have say 20 GB of RAM being assigned or 20 CPUs being assigned, we cannot create a same kind of machine on Azure as well, right? So we'll have to check for out of that resource being allocated, how much is the actual consumption? Is it 30% consumption, 20% consumption? What is the actual consumption right now? Because what I have observed is a lot of organizations within their on-premises environment don't provision for resources today. they provision for resources keeping in mind next 5 years or next 10 years. Correct? So that's why it is important to look at what is the current consumption of that resources. That's second. Third is uh, their spike scenarios. So today, say for example, what's today? Today started. Okay, I have gone to the customer side on Wednesday, and Wednesday is something where they will have minimum of utilization. Their maximum utilization happens over the weekends, right? So I will also have to study the spike scenarios. So maximum how much has been the consumption, right? Depending upon their customer hits or customer request which is coming in, what is the maximum that they have reached, and maximum how much has been the consumption, 30%, 60% or 80%, how much maximum they have gone to. So these are some of the primary things that we'll have to assess on the customer side. And
Okay,
again, we will have our own list of questions there.
yeah, for example, you assess like now I will say, hey Subhash, can you design can you create a server for me? It could be I need a file server. Okay, I need a file server, and I have to have like 80 terabytes of
Sorry, can you
data.
repeat the last line?
Yeah, I want to create a file server, and I want to have
Okay.
and I have got 100 terabytes, and out of 100 terabytes, only 40 terabyte, 40
Correct.
400 gigs will be accessed every single day. So
Correct.
how do you create that part?
Okay. So now, like you mentioned the requirement, in this case, I would first look at whether I need to create a machine over here, or I can directly use a storage service. We have already of Azure File Share as a service. Why don't we use that PaaS service itself? So this is the kind of requirement, and you'd want to transfer the data that, like you said, a certain amount of data on a daily basis. I can have a file sync service created on Azure, and I can associate that by using a file share service, which is available as part of my storage account. So like I said earlier, first thing I will do is, based on my experience, I will first look at what are the PaaS options available, platform as a service available. I will look at that, right? And if I can get my job done using PaaS services with minimized management for my team, that's the easiest approach for me. And also the customer gets the required SLA with minimum downtime. So that would be my approach.
Yeah, I have a lot more questions on that actually. Like now, identifying the servers and identifying the services.
I understand. So once I go to the architecting section, I will I will answer all those questions. I can also share you some of the questions which Microsoft recommends to be asked for virtual machines, for storage account, for network. All that is part of your well architected framework. So you'll be able to find all questions over here. Questions for workloads, questions for security, reliability. Microsoft has given set of relevant questions over here that you should ask. Let me put this link on the chat window. So tomorrow, since it is a break for you, you might want to go through this. And what you're asking for, all these questions are here for storage, cost optimization, everything. This is called as Microsoft well architected framework.
Subsequent questions about here. So I know there is a calculator which is existing in the AWS server. So if situation-based hypothetical service, AWS has got a calculator. You plug in. Hey, I need I need 4 VMs, and out of 4 VMs, two of app servers, two of web servers, and one database servers, and five of them
Correct.
are. So is there any calculator in the Azure also for the portal?
Yes, there is a calculator. So if you go to your azure.com, Under pricing section, you have Azure pricing calculator. So you specify whatever resources you want, what storage is required, what VMs are required. You can get the cost over here. I've not worked with AWS, so I'm not sure if this is the same thing which AWS also gives.
Yeah, you're right.
This is what is available on Azure. Okay.
Yeah, some
what I have done,
companies they
guys,
have a
right now
built
is
Excel sheet. Some companies they have an Excel template. You plug in, it calculates.
Right.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So guys, yeah. So what I have done is I have got my virtual machine created. Sorry, virtual machine specified. What is the image I want? What is the size that I want over here? Right? Respective username and password. Public inbound ports I have mentioned as none. Any reason for it? I'm going to use these things by selecting the existing network security group.
Yeah, VNet.
Yes. So here if you see, it is showing virtual network as new. Right? Virtual network as new. Subnet, whatever pre-existing subnet I have, I can select that. I'm not sure why it's not showing VNet 1 and VNet 2. Anyone? Any reasons for it?
Maybe you picked a different network. 3 doesn't
Not
have
a different network.
release. Maybe 3 doesn't have subnets.
Maybe you picked the region.
Asia, if you remember. Yes.
Yeah, region.
That's why I said. So if it is in different, that's why you are not able to see that. So if I choose Southeast Asia, and this is what I said, and this is the significance of the location that you have. So depending upon which location you choose, the options will change over here. So if I now go to networking, now I can see VNet and VNet 2. Okay. So here you want to create this in which word. So I'm not creating anything new. If you see, all these are pre-existing members. Public IP, I already have the public IP. And who has created this? All this is being created by my networking team. As a server member, I just need to go and create the resources over here. So NIC network security group, no, I don't want to create a new one. I have an existing one. Can you see this? Web NSG. So you'll realize everything I'm selecting from the pre-existing resources. And this is what I was mentioning as template. So when you try creating a virtual machine, Microsoft will give you all these options by default. Okay. So here, let me select my storage account. There's for another batch I have created OMP storage. So who will give me the storage account? Storage team. I just have to go and associate it over here. One of the most dangerous things that people do is, based on their earlier habit, they never shut down their machines. So if you are using dead test machines, right, you need to make sure you shut down the machine once your job is being done. Right. So if you have your people who don't do that regularly or forget doing that, you can create a schedule over here. Please be careful. This is not relevant to production machines. This is only for dev test machines. Production machines anyways will not shut down. Extensions I will skip for now. We'll come to this part a bit later. Let me go ahead, click on review and create. So what I'm doing over here is associating all the members. So it says, Subhash, I don't have to create anything new. Network interface card was not there, so I have created it. Virtual machine I am creating, but I'm not creating virtual network, subnet, network security group, storage. All these things have been pre-existing. So are you getting it? If I already have these resources, it will pick up those members from there and it will create the members for me. It will create a new virtual machine for me. And this is what I wanted to show you. How to use some of the existing resources that we have.